sort of, if I could frame the conversation and dig through some of the confusion, and Dr. Nicolosi, I'm going to come to you in just a minute. But we're really talking about choice. That we're trying to preserve, we're trying to have a conversation about should choice of various kinds be preserved, and if they are, what are the potential social consequences? And because that's where it gets a little confusing, because you're saying, geez, the fact that some of these religious organizations have picked up on, say, some of the techniques, the reparative therapy, which we're going to define yet, hang on, has maybe worked to harm people, young people.
Because it's based on shame and guilt and something broken. And when you are surrounded now as a teenager by evidence and positive gay role models and legislation that's evolving and changing, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart that someone would still have that kind of unsupported shame and guilt. Okay, well, let's take we have another guest who's on the phone, Mary Lou Wallner. She's joining us from Florida. This is a very personal story, similar to what you're talking about here, Sam. Her personal story altered the course of her thinking. Mary Lou, tell us about that, please.
I was raised in a conservative Christian home and church environment and taught that homosexuality was a sin. And in 1988, my daughter, Anna, came out as a lesbian to us as she was a freshman in college, and I rejected that. I did not love her unconditionally. I didn't throw her out or forbid her from coming home, but I made it pretty clear to her that I didn't approve of her, what I thought to be chosen lifestyle, and then in February of 1997, she hanged herself. And that was the end of it. And after that, I needed some answers. And so I really went on a journey of studying the scriptures, praying, talking to people on both sides of the issue, and finally, after about a year of study, came to the belief that I had been taught an untruth by the church, and that indeed homosexuality is not a choice. You might be able to repress the behavior, but you certainly cannot repress who you are made to be. And I believe that God makes us the way we are, and I believe that homosexual people are created just as they are by God.
Dr. Nicolosi, how do you respond to that, and then tell us about reparative therapy?
Well, certainly it's a tragedy, and we don't attempt to justify it in any way, but people can change. People have a choice. People should be given a choice. And if a person chooses to exercise his potential, his heterosexual potential, if a person is trying to understand the root causes of his homosexuality and perhaps diminish the sexual attraction, he should be allowed to do it. We provide that therapy. Therapy works, and it doesn't work for all people, but it works for some people.
Do you worry that the fact that treatment is out there is going to be used by people to have unintended social consequences? You understand what I'm asking?
You mean as a cultural statement? Or
that unfortunately...
You mean for the client or for...
No, that the consequences on other gay individuals who don't want to do anything but be who they are.
I think we should get to a point where gay is okay and also not to be gay is okay.
We're back in the studio with singer and gay rights advocate Sam Harris and psychologist Joseph Nicolosi, who uses reparative therapy. We're going to find out finally, I'm going to get to what exactly that is. Joining us also is Christine Sneeringer. She's a former lesbian who attended an Exodus International Ministry and is now straight. So, first, Dr. Nicolosi, we haven't gotten this straight yet, and I promised we would pay this out. What is reparative therapy?
Can I say that I don't think Alan was treated very well in the last show?
That we didn't treat him well?
Yeah, I didn't give him a chance to talk and really tell his story. He was put on the defensive.
Okay.
Just to say that.
Okay. And the reparative therapy?
What is reparative therapy? Yeah. Reparative therapy is basically saying your homosexuality is an attempt to repair something other than your sexuality. You're using your homosexuality as an attempt to repair certain deficits within yourself, whether it be gender identity or key identity issues within yourself.
And so the treatment?
So the treatment is to understand what those deficits are and to fulfill them in non-sexual ways.
Is it a form of trauma therapy?
Absolutely. We believe that trauma creates the homosexual condition. It's an attachment loss with the parents. And that the therapy is resolving the trauma, resolving the attachment loss, and when they do that, their same-sex attraction diminishes.
Okay. Christine, I want to go to you. You say that Exodus was able to help you. How?
Well, I mean, actually what Dr. Nicolosi was talking about...
I'm going to interrupt you. You got sad while he was talking. I could see it in your eyes.
Well, I was sad thinking about my own life, and there was trauma. I come from a home where there was abuse in my home. My father was physically and verbally abusive to my mother. I was sexually abused as a child. And there was a lot of gender confusion because I looked on at my family dynamics and I actually thought I had the all-American family. And so I didn't understand till later in meeting other people, realizing that this isn't really how mom and dads are supposed to, you know, get along. And so I had very, very negative views of men growing up, began to gravitate towards masculinity as it is out of a desire to protect myself and not be hurt from like my mother was. So for me, looking on at what Joe was sharing, it's like I can see that in my own life that I was trying to compensate for being sexually abused.
But shouldn't you have had treatment for sexual abuse trauma? I mean, wouldn't that did you go to traditional mental health professionals?
When I went to an Exodus ministry for help, I did see a counselor, and we talked about sexual abuse and talked about how that affected.
Was it a professional, like a licensed person?
I've had 3 seasons in my life where I've seen therapists. So the first one was a lay counselor through church, you know, as a young adult. And yes, I've seen a licensed professional as well.
Okay.
And so we've dealt with sexual abuse and how that impacted my view of men and my view of myself as a woman, because I was very gender confused. I didn't want to embrace a feminine identity because I believed that to be feminine was to be weak. For me, my homosexuality was an attempt to, one, compensate for the breakdown in the relationship with the same-sex parent, and that's a common theme that I've seen among colleagues, friends, peers that have also come out of homosexuality, is that there's that breakdown and we're trying to compensate for that.
I have to interrupt you, and I'm going to introduce Casey and Larry Jansen. They met each other while attending what's called an ex-gay ministry program. They struggled to reconcile their Christianity with their homosexuality. They are now married, and they're joining us from Dallas. Now, you guys were with us on Friday. What was the reaction to your comments on the show, and what do you say to what we're saying here in the studio today?
You know, I think the reaction that we've gotten has been overwhelming to us. It's been very positive. We've had a lot of people try and contact us through Facebook or email, just thanking us for sharing our story, you know, and giving us a chance to have a platform to be able to share the truth about all of this. And I think it's extremely important to go back to what Dr. Nicolosi said. You know, you were trying to repair trauma. The funny thing is that when I went to Love in Action, they tried to get me to realize what trauma I had growing up, so that way I could blame that on homosexuality. But the thing is, I had a great relationship with my father, had a great relationship with my mother, had a brother and sister. We all got along. I was never abused.
Guys,
you know, nothing ever happened in my childhood.
I have to interrupt you. I got to take a quick break. I get that, but we'll be back just a second. We are back with a very challenging conversation. I was talking to Casey and Larry Jansen, and Casey, I interrupted you. I apologize, but I have limited time. I want to hear now from Larry what the reaction was from his point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for having us. You know, we have just been overwhelmed. There are, you know, listening to Sam Harris, there are still individuals out there who aren't hearing the message that you can be gay and be a Christian in those pockets of conservative areas in the United States. And at the end of the day, we want to offer that hope. We want individuals to know that there is another option. And with Exodus International, unfortunately, like Dr. Nicolosi, not all of them are licensed therapists providing this reparative therapy and giving people the repair, supposedly, that they need in that way. So that's our biggest concern, and we want to make sure that that message is still shared, that there is hope and that you can have a healthy, normal relationship and live a totally, completely happy gay lifestyle and have a relationship with God and that higher being, whatever that may be for you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Dr. Nicolosi, do you have a response to that? And final word.
Choice should be allowed for the individual. If a person wants to develop his heterosexual potential, if he wants to diminish something distressing in his life, he should be allowed to do so, and it can't be reduced to homophobia.
Maybe the language needs to be changed so people can't co-opt it. Maybe it should be, if people want to work on trauma issues and if it happens to change their sexual identity, whatever kind of thing.
Exactly, but that's exactly how it
works. But unfortunately it gets co-opted as somebody needs to change, and somebody needs a treatment and stuff.
But it doesn't have to be.
So Sam, what do you say to that?
I didn't suffer any trauma. I think the word repair means something is broken. And what I stand for is you too can have this, have it all. And so I would encourage people to get rid of the shame rather than try to change the person who is shamed.
And I think it's to be explicit, not everybody has trauma, and only those people who had trauma who want to work on trauma would be seeing Dr. Nicolosi.
Fine.
Okay. Christine, I promised you last words if I had time, and I have about a minute.
Well, I would agree that not everybody has trauma and shame related to this, but I did because of my faith and belief in Jesus Christ and what the Bible says about homosexuality. And so I live a happy and fulfilled life as a follower of him and with my homosexuality resolved.
Sam, I'm giving you the last word.
I just want people to be happy. I don't want anyone coerced or taken advantage of because of that guilt and shame. And I feel like people are making money off of saying, you feel this badly about yourself, I'm going to take your money and convince you that you can be otherwise.
And I think we all agree you have to be very, very careful of unintended consequences of any of this conversation. Whatever your point of view is, the goal here is not to hurt anybody, really. And Larry and Casey, you agree with me on this? Any last words from you two?
Absolutely. I would just say, you know, that's the concern, is that harm, is how it harms, you know, following right along with Sam. The guilt and shame is so heavy in that Exodus International, having lived it and been through what we've been through. So we would also say we want people to be able to live that happy life and not have that guilt and shame, and be able to be resolved with Jesus Christ as well.
All right, well, listen, this is a difficult conversation. As I mentioned on Friday, I get angry with my producer as to her sending me down this landmine-ridden trail. I'm just trying to elevate the conversation, and certainly our intent here is not to harm anybody in any way whatsoever, and certainly not to add to people's guilt and shame or to change people that have a certain point of view. It's just to elevate the conversation. That's the idea here. I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank my panel for joining me today, and we will see you next time.